Good afternoon. Welcome all of you back to the WA Mining Conference Day 1. We've had a fantastic first couple of sessions. So certainly the insights that Andrew Charlton gave us on the economic impact of COVID were fascinating. Graham Stenway, as always, gave us a really good summary of the COVID impact on the innovation ecosystem and how it's accelerating some of our innovation and shifting it. Nicholas gave us a really good insight into what's emerging from visualization, and Matt Schneider gave us some interesting insights into considering how you can leverage your data to develop your own SaaS model. So we continue with our really fascinating round of speakers, and I'm really pleased to see Jacqui presenting to us today. Jacqui is the CEO of Amira Global. She will be presenting on an update on the new $20 million automation and robotic test facility in Neerabup in WA, which is really an enormous step forward for the innovation ecosystem in what is one of the major jurisdictions in Australia and in the world. Amira is a minerals industry thought leader with experience across the mine value chain, commodities, and across the globe. Amira is really focusing on developing skilled collaborations across the industry, government, and academia. Is developing capabilities of businesses and people, and is integrating ideas into systems to add value, improve efficiency and productivity, and maintain momentum for ongoing innovation. Amira has had a long history at been at the centre of innovation in Australia, and I think Jacqui is taking what has been a cornerstone of Australian research to another level. Pleased to see you here, Jacqui. Over to you.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you for this opportunity to share with the, I suppose, the ecosystem and have an opportunity just to explore ideas a little further. And it's such a privilege to be presenting this, particularly with Rick in the room, knowing the work that he did. Rick and I worked together, or I worked for Rick in Mets Ignited a few years ago, and it's a privilege to be part of taking this idea further, not only because it existed, but because of the impact it can make to society. Now, Amira is a member-based not-for-profit, and according to our constitution, we have three purposes. The first is to enhance the standing of our industry. The second is to sustain the development of the resources sector in a way that's acceptable to society. And the third, and probably the most tangible, is the delivery. And this is the delivery of new data, knowledge, technology, and products to help our members. And I've been really privileged to be working with our board, who are all drawn from our member base, and their conversation, and much of their conversation, is how do we deliver impact for our members, but in a way that can bring benefit to society more broadly. And to this, our operational mission takes three levels. The first is to provide those thought leadership platforms and focusing on that transformational change for our industry. The second, Amira has spent 60 years building collaborations to deliver pre-competitive, transformative R&D and innovation. And we're focusing particularly on those technological breakthroughs. The third, which is particularly relevant to our conversation today, is finding pathways to implementation. And what this is about is not just creating the research, bringing people together, understanding what's happening, but very deliberately finding a way to have this innovation and R&D find its way back into industry. And to that end, one of the pieces of work we did recently in October, the 10th of October, just as an aside, 1010 is the binary number for 10, so a particularly beautiful number for myself as a mathematician. So this particular day, it was a 24-hour conference, 72 presentations, panels, and demonstrations to really showcase what is happening in terms of remote operations, automation, and robotics. And there were contributions from every continent, Antarctica, of course, to showcase the technology and the advances in our industry that relate to automation and robotics. It's amazing to see how quickly this is developing, and not only how quickly it's developing, how enthusiastically it's developing. So the emerging themes from that day looked at conceptual technology, emerging technology, current technology. There were contributions from associations, test facilities, innovation hubs. We had presentations from labour, education challenges. We looked at regional challenges. Energy and emissions came up quite often. And then, of course, the concept of industry integration. This was an opportunity to showcase the research roadmaps and challenges. And I'd like to draw some attention to the key themes that are critical for our industry and for our communities to address. And these relate specifically to the invisible infrastructure that can make or break the advancement in automation, robotics, and remote operations. The first of these is the data growth and the future bandwidth. Just the sheer increase in data technology and data demand. We're going to need to face how do we deal with the highway of data to and from our sensor technology through to our decision makers. The second is interoperability and connectivity, interconnectivity. And with interoperability, here I'd like to emphasize that it's not just can my machine speak to another machine, but rather how does the whole system act as a brain, as an interacting, interoperable, interconnected brain. And we've got some way to go before we can get there. The third of these, related to the first two, has got to cybersecurity. One of the things that I noticed was I would suggest we've got a way to go in terms of maturity in understanding cybersecurity. This is not about whether I'll be hacked, but rather can my operation continue to operate in light of even a minor transgression. The human interfacing and the global capacity building comes through across, as it does in many themes, is how do we build the capacity to handle things. And the final comment there is around responsible interfacing and what does it mean for communities. I'd like to focus on this one in a moment, but for now, just draw your attention that it doesn't matter what aspect of the mine value system we look at, whether it's tailings, the water, energy, resources, all of these systems require the data integration and the challenges that we envisage ahead of us. Amira is working to build an enabling futures program. These speak to the capacity building, the standardization, the knowledge aggregation to enable that pathway of R&D through to our industry. The one I'd like to focus on today is the integrated global facilities access. And the purpose of this is to allow the development of a global network and community of diverse, active, integrated, interoperable, and exceptional quality test facilities, which we're hoping Neerabup will be. Now, the question that I often get asked is why an automation robotics precinct? I mean, surely robotics and automation is already here. Our trucks don't have cabs. Our milk is being brought to us with fully autonomous machinery. There's no farmer waking up at 4 o'clock to go and milk the cow anymore. The closest they get to it is driving the milk into the city. We have got robotics as a service, as an emerging industry sector, and we've got operations happening remotely, as in medical operations. And one of my favorite has to be the Japanese cafe that uses robots controlled by paralyzed people, providing an opportunity for the disabled to integrate with society. So in many ways, automation and robotics is here. But then we look at texts such as the Robotics upheaval. And when you read things like the automation and globalization are century-old stories, but robotics is different for two big reasons. And the main reasons is it's coming at us inhumanely fast, and most importantly, it will seem unbelievably unfair. And there's this element of who are the humans and how do we deal with the humans in the changes that are ahead of us. There's a big call to protect workers, not jobs. So rather than talk about jobs of the future, we need to think about workers of the future. And this is not a new phenomenon. Jennifer Rayner, who published Blue Collar Braid, did some work on Australian regional areas, and it shows that there's about a 10% drop in engaged workforce in the last decade in the regions, and I'm just highlighting Mandurah. There's a drop of about 10%, Bunbury, a drop of about 7%, and the Western Australia wheat belt, a drop of about 6%. She breaks these tables into men and women. There's a lot more in terms of that change in the labour market for men, and in particular the blue-collar workers. And then add to the mix that there are companies, particularly in energy and mining, that realistically do not have a lifespan beyond the next 15 to 20 years. So either way, the jobs they currently provide are going. And what the call here is for, what alternatives do we provide? And how do we start seeding new industries with a real challenge of taking root? More recently, Cisco produced a report on blue tech jobs, this idea of developing blue skills, occupation and skills that are technology intensive but require a sub-degree qualification. And similarly, the International Labour Organization published a treatise on green tech jobs. So there's a critical role here in terms of blue tech digital skills and in society and developing economic recovery. Met's Ignited in Neera, and I would just like to add that under, in particular, Rick Gross's leadership, commissioned the Staying Ahead of the Game report. And this was an important piece of work that highlighted what we need to do as an industry and what we need to identify in terms of the future, particularly under the very real situation where jobs are moving out of mining and into the supply chain. Alpha Beta highlighted that there's a unique opportunity to build a world-leading advantage in resource-based automation robotics. And this means leading the technology, the development, the supply chain. It means being world-class resource-focused. It means bringing universities to efficiently and effectively integrate with industry. It's about training and attracting the computer engineers and data scientists, and really it's about this tech literacy development. So the vision here is for a highly competitive resources, automation, robotics cluster that can feed in and supply the workforce of the future. Coming out of this report as well is the call that each actor has to play a key role. No one aspect of our community and our ecosystem can do this alone. We need industry, government, and the educators to work together. And I would add that we need the school education to feed into this as well. And by that I mean education as a whole. I have a strong view that the education system, which relies on 3-hour exams where you're not allowed to clarify the question, where you're not allowed to work with your peers, where you're not allowed to access resources to provide a solution, is not generating the kind of people we need to solve the problems that we have. The report has a 4-point roadmap, a call to action, the creation of clusters, the development of the ecosystem, and an emphasis here on boosting skills and the research and development. So this piece of work is an important body of work that inspired a conversation, several conversations, most recently a conversation that Paul Lucy brought to Amira to say what is it that Amira is going to do about what contribution can we play to advancing automation robotics, and in particular the Neerabup opportunity that Metz Ignited and Paul Lucy had been advancing. So Amira did get involved, and Amira provided a survey amongst other things, and 3 key questions that arose. The first is, what type of organisation is taking an interest? What is the organisation's size, and what sector does the organisation service? Now, I have to be upfront here. I was expecting a bigger proportion from mining. I was quite comfortable with the idea that this was predominantly equipment, technology and service providers, and that's just because of the history with Metz Ignited. And then, of course, the organisation size. What we have here are those micro businesses, as well as large equipment and significant global entities participating. And this speaks to the spectrum of interest in test facilities. But the sector that the organisation services, only 15% of the sector, service sector was mining, at which point we spoke with Jacqui and highlighted that there was an opportunity far greater than just mining. This is an opportunity to bring the sectors together. This is an opportunity to focus on the technology as a sector rather than the industry as a sector. And I was quite pleased to see the cross-section of interest there in many ways, as far as opportunities are for the ecosystem. In addition to the demographics, the impacts, the priorities and the impacts, number 1 was enhanced collaborative research. So this emphasis on collaboration, this emphasis on accelerating business. This is really about the supply chain and accelerating the commercialization. So the accelerated commercialization is an opportunity for the supply chain to demonstrate their wares, demonstrate the collaboration, as well as demonstrate their technology in a safe environment. The other aspect of this is for the industries to watch and observe without having to commit upfront, so that reduces the cost as well. Always developing the workforce capability and developing new technologies. We need the space to create that serendipitous opportunity. Priority areas, as I highlighted before, interoperability. How are these systems going to work together? How they're going to work together in a collaborative, mechanistic way. Attending to the value chain in terms of ore sorting, crushing, etc. Dealing with the technology of drones and sensors, thinking about the small-scale field robotics and indeed automation in mobile equipment. So we were quite delighted when Development WA procured the $20 million to advance this automation robotics precinct. And I must say I've been particularly impressed with Development WA's insistence that this is about developing the supply chain. It's about developing the capability, and it's about advancing a broad community. It does not belong to any one person or any one sector. The precinct itself is in WA, north of the city, situated just near the Barbagella racetrack. And this is a 30-year commitment on the state government's part. And Rick would understand the work that has gone into shaping and establishing this. This has been a long journey, so it's really quite exciting to see it come to fruition. And I'd just like to highlight that this has been state, it's been federal, it's been Metz Ignited, it's been Emira, it's been TAFE, it's been the universities, it's been industry from various sectors discussing and advancing this opportunity. The initial site is 51 hectares. The idea behind the site is that it will be by lease. So you lease the space to test your equipment, technology. There will be collaborative spaces. And it's going to be a use it or lose it basis, and anybody who's been in exploration will be quite comfortable with that concept of a license to use. Just south of the automation robotics precinct is the Meridian Park, and Meridian Park then offers saleable land should parties want to relocate to this space. So quite an exciting opportunity, and quite an exciting time for the industry to come together with the rest of the ecosystem to build a collaboration, to celebrate, participate. And one of the things Amira is looking forward to doing is on the 20th of January, hosting our members to showcase some technology at Neerabup, Automation Robotics Precinct. I believe it's got a new name, which I'd love to share with you, but I think Development WA hold the right to share that with you. But it's a really superb name. And we look forward to, along with Minister Johnson, opening that space on the 20th of January. In the meanwhile, the Development WA are calling for expressions of interest, and I've asked the organisers to share that link in the chat if you'd like to submit your own expressions of interest. This is a space for the community. This is a space for the ecosystem. I think it's an important space for our generation, the next generation, and indeed for the generations that are currently at school. So thank you. If there are any questions, I look forward to answering those.
Jacqui, thank you very much for a comprehensive presentation once again. And I think that under your leadership, you're reshaping Amira, and it's pleasing to see that it's taken such a prominent lead in the innovation ecosystem. And congratulations on the test facility in WA. I think you know how much work is going into that, and I know how much more work is happening in the last year and a half, 2 years. So a great congratulations. Tell me a little bit more. I'm really pleased to hear that it's not just mining, that in actual fact we're looking at automation and robotics in the context of multi-faceted sectors. Agriculture, I assume, yes. Defence, I assume?
Yes, defence, agriculture, space have now got involved. Manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, which as we all know is absolutely essential, particularly around the material science. And then, of course, agriculture. Did I mention agriculture?
Yes.
Yes, sorry. And of course, mining, oil and gas. This is about the technology that can advance and have opportunity to cross-pollinate and cross-fertilize.
It's really important because I think we got scale, and I think the aggregation of that demand of innovation across those sectors create a larger scale that would really positions Western Australia really well to be a global centre for automation and robotic into those particular sectors. So if I'm an SME or a startup, how do I engage in Neerabup? Do I get in contact with you guys?
I think the very first spot to get involved with is through the Development WA. Because they are collating that, and that's the link that I've asked the organisers to share. What Amira is focused on is developing the research and development program around particularly invisible infrastructures, but also automation and robotics, and how we can use this facility to really bring about accelerated integration back into industry.
Are you expecting to see a CRC emerging out of automation and robotics in WA? Is this something that's around the corner, or?
I think that would be a wonderful idea, and part of that is developing and understanding what the key breakthroughs are that are worthy of collaborative investment.
Excellent. So any final words of encouragement for the industry, Jacqui?
I think the final words would be, and you know my bearing on education, Rick. It's let's start challenging the educators to deliver to us the kind of people we need to advance the industry. And let's see what we can do in terms of shaping that. Mostly it's about collaboration and how we stimulate collaborators.
It's interesting, just in closing, a number of conversations that I had in the last couple of years related to the shift in the university education heading towards micro qualifications, and the fact that it's moving so quickly that, you know, let's do a 1-year generic term and then basically have this concept of education for life with micro qualifications as to support the various particular projects that you're working on in your role or your business or your the company you work for. Is that still a concept that continues to emerge?
I believe so, Rick. I think it's really important that we have a diverse education. Each of us brings unique skills, and I think the more we can celebrate with our interests and be guided by our interests, the more we'll create boundary spanners. Notwithstanding that, we do need the specialists. And I know from Amira's perspective, developing PhDs in high science, high focus science is still critical. So the WAXI project, for example, we've helped sponsor 100 PhDs, half of whom are in West Africa. And what that does is stimulate an education growth in the geosciences. So I do believe that there's room for a spectrum. So we've got to not replace one with the other, but breed a diversity in terms of what we're wanting from people.
Excellent, Jacqui. A question came through. The question reads, are companies able to supply donate product for evaluation for specific applications?
I think that's exactly the kind of thing Development WA are looking for.
Excellent. So that's a definite yes. And a final thank you, Jacqui, for your involvement and look forward to staying in touch. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye then.